Battle of Honor. The king who stood for his people faced the clash between the Yulania and Tursylvan. The king who stood for his people faced the clash between the Yulania and Tursylvan. The king of Kyrania sought to gain the trust of the Yulania king and ministers by volunteering to join the battle. The prime minister of Yulania sent one of his sons to the commander of the Yulania army, instructing him to assassinate the king of Kyrania, fearing he might pose a threat in the future. However, the commander hesitated, considering the character of the king of Kyrania, and refrained from making a hasty decision. Upon reaching the battlefield, the king went to the laborers' camp and was surprised to find his own countrymen being unjustly used. They were overjoyed, and one of them inquired about the king among the 5 men who entered the camp. "Who is the king?" a man asked. "He is," one of the king's men replied, pointing to the king. "How did you know?" All the laborers bowed. "We're from Kyrania, and we heard you were here." "Arise," the king said. "How many of us are here?" "About half of the labor force." "How did you end up here?" "At first, we fought the Tursylvan. But after losing, along with the lack of weapons and provisions, we were drafted as laborers." One laborer explained, "They treat us like animals." Another laborer added, "Just today, 2 of us were killed for desertion." "What?" "Help us, sir." They greeted the king warmly, hopeful that their suffering had come to an end. However, a soldier blew a whistle outside the tent they were in, and they all rushed out, except the 5 men. A laborer turned and informed them that if they didn't go out, they would miss their daily food, a significant deprivation in those circumstances. Outside, the commander of the Yulania army and other high-ranking soldiers stood on a podium along with the leader of the laborers. The commander signaled to the soldier with the drum to sound it, and the archers surrounding the stage aimed their arrows at the laborers. Then all the laborers knelt down, except the king of Kyrania and his 4 men. The king, after much thought, forced himself to kneel. When the drum sounded a second time, they all rose, the king and all his men forcing themselves to comply. The commander of the Yulania army then turned to the son of the minister and said, "You see, they are easily controlled." "That's not what his father wants," the man replied, but the commander refused to listen further. He then turned to the leader of the laborers and said, "They are now under your control." The commander of the Yulania army called the king into his tent. So he was dragged in. "I have to rout the Tursylvan and secure the lake road," the commander said, folding his hands on the map. "To do that, I have to whip this rabble into shape. Make no mistake, anyone that gets in my way is dead. Tell me, what should I do to survive this place?" "Survive? Dream on. It's impossible to kill all the Tursylvan. And for either of us, that is the only way out of here." The king, his 4 men and the other laborers were forced to work in the quarry, breaking rocks and loading them to a certain location. The king now saw how dire the situation was for the people of Kyrania. They rarely ate, and if they did, they worked all day. They were beaten carelessly. Then one night, while they were still working in the quarry, the truth came to light. "Eat with us," the king said to the passing Kyrania laborers, but they looked down on him and spat on the ground. "Come on," one of them said, and they moved away from the king's face. "How dare," said one of the 4 men. The king said, "They are disappointed." "What for?" said one of his men. "They thought with him here, things might get better," replied the other. Another said to the king, "Ignore it. Your safety is all that matters." Suddenly, one of the king's men came. "Something isn't right." They all looked up. "I heard sounds of men in the woods." The men started staring at one another. Immediately, an unknown man shouted, "Attack!" and they were ambushed by the Tursylvan army. The king was saddened to see his countrymen dying, fighting with swords but no weapons in their hands. "Our brothers are dying right before our eyes. Sir, leave this to us." He then shouted to his men to pick up the Tursylvan's weapons and protect the people of Kyrania. The laborers. The fighting was intense. After the short fight, the Yulania commander arrived, and the Tursylvan ran away. He then asked how many of their soldiers had died. The reporter said, 12 soldiers of the Yulania died. When he asked about the laborers, the reporter said, about 100 at a glance. The king of Kyrania was seriously angered. He picked up his sword and stood to confront the commander. The fight began. The commander then told the king to follow him to his tent in the Yulania main camp. There, he accused the commander, laborers or not, they should have been armed. If you are short of arms, the Yulania should protect them. The blood of the innocent is on your hands. You think they are poorly used? You know they are. Fair enough, but it wouldn't make any difference. They think this is a war between us and the Tursylvan. It is not my doing. It is theirs. War without purpose is lost. The king looks strong. I won't give weapons to men that care only for themselves. Today, tomorrow, in the end, they'll be dead. The king replied, I will make them a force to be reckoned with. Give me a command. The leader of the laborers and the son of the minister immediately refused. But the king said the leader ran away when he should have protected the laborers. He can't be led to victory. The prime minister's son said, yet a defeat may mean his neck. I am in favor, said the commander's left hand. Either way, we can't get the leader off the position. You two fight it out, said the commander. I will use the winner. Everyone stared at each other. Well, what do you say? Said the commander. Definitely, replied the king. And you? He turned to the leader. He was living the high life while my hands bled from training. How could I refuse? They later concluded that the two should fight to choose the new leader of the laborers, the Kyrania people. It was a fight to save the people. The king won the fight and successfully led the people, ending their harsh lives. The time of difficulty had come to an end. If you have someone who's going to fight for you, and you see they have no power, rest assured and help them as you can, because one day the opportunity might come and they might not miss it.